Most people come back from spring break with sunburns and bad decisions. I came back with something I still can't explain, and a name I wish I'd never learned. It was March, junior year. Me and 3 of my college friends rented a cabin outside of Gatlinburg, Tennessee. Nothing fancy, just a small 2-bedroom place tucked into the woods off a rural highway. We found it on one of those vacation rental sites for about $60 a night split 4 ways. The pictures looked decent. The reviews were fine, nothing suspicious. We were 21-year-old guys looking for a cheap week away from campus. That's all it was supposed to be. We drove down from Ohio on a Sunday afternoon. 8 hours in a packed SUV with gas station snacks and a playlist nobody could agree on. By the time we pulled off the highway and onto the gravel road leading to the cabin, it was already dark. The headlights swept across thick tree lines on both sides, and I remember thinking the place felt more remote than the listing made it sound. But we were tired and ready to be out of the car, so nobody said anything about it. The cabin itself was fine. Small living room, a kitchenette, 2 bedrooms in the back. It smelled like pine cleaner and something faintly damp, but nothing alarming. We unloaded the coolers, claimed our sleeping spots. Normal spring break stuff. The first 2 days were exactly what you'd expect. We hiked during the day, cooked out at night, stayed up too late. It was good. Easy. Nobody had a reason to be on edge. The 3rd day was when things started to shift. We'd driven into Gatlinburg to grab groceries. On the way back, my friend Marcus mentioned that the neighbor at the end of the gravel road, a guy in an older truck, had been idling near our driveway when he left that morning to get coffee. He said the guy didn't wave, didn't move, just sat there watching him pull out. Marcus laughed it off, said maybe it was just some local who didn't like tourists. We all agreed, moved on. That night I woke up at around 2 in the morning. I don't know why. No sound that I could specifically point to. I just opened my eyes and I was awake, that kind of awake where your brain is running before your body catches up. I lay there for a few minutes, then got up to get some water. The kitchen window faced the side yard and the gravel road beyond the tree line. I wasn't looking for anything when I glanced out. I wasn't on alert, but the motion sensor light mounted on the corner of the cabin was on, and it was pointing at an empty yard. I stood there for a second watching it. Wind can trigger those lights. Animals can too. I told myself that. Then it clicked off. I drank my water and went back to bed. The next morning I mentioned the light to the others. Nobody made a big deal out of it. We had plans to drive up to a lookout point and nobody wanted to kill the mood, so we dropped it. What I didn't mention, what I didn't say out loud because it felt like nothing, was that when I'd looked out that window, I'd also noticed that the padlock on the small storage shed at the edge of the yard was hanging open. Not broken, just open, like someone had a key. I'd seen it locked the night we arrived. I was almost certain of it. That afternoon, while the others were out at the lookout, I stayed back at the cabin. My knee was sore from the hike the day before, and I wasn't in the mood for the drive. I was sitting on the front porch when the older truck I'd heard Marcus describe came slowly up the gravel road and stopped about 30 feet from the cabin's front steps. The man inside was probably mid-50s, heavy build. He had the window down and his arm resting on the door. He just looked at me. Not threatening exactly, but not friendly either. Just steady and deliberate, like he was taking inventory. I raised my hand. He didn't. After about 20 seconds, and I know that sounds short, but it wasn't, he reversed slowly back down the road and disappeared around the tree line. My heart was going faster than I wanted to admit. I went inside and locked the front door. When the others got back, I told them what happened. The mood shifted. Marcus thought we should call the rental company. My other friend Devin thought I was reading too much into a nosy neighbor. We went back and forth about it for a while, and eventually agreed to just keep the doors locked and stay aware. That night we found something that ended the debate. Devin went to pull extra blankets from the closet in the back bedroom and found a phone mounted inside the closet wall, not sitting on a shelf, but mounted, zip-tied to a bracket that had been screwed directly into the wood. The lens was pointed through a small gap at the top of the closet door. The phone was off, battery dead. But when Devin plugged it into his charger to check, it powered on and showed a storage folder with video files going back over a year. We didn't watch them. We didn't touch anything else. We grabbed what we could in about 10 minutes, got in the car, and drove until we hit a gas station with decent lighting. Marcus called 911 from the parking lot. The police met us there, took our statements, went to the cabin. We found out later, through one of the responding officers who called Marcus the following week, that the property owner listed on the rental had reported the cabin as managed by a local caretaker. That caretaker was the man in the truck. His name was in the paperwork. They brought him in for questioning. I don't know exactly what happened after that. We were back in Ohio by the time any of it was processed. I've looked up the name online a few times and never found anything tied to a conviction. I don't know if that means it didn't go anywhere or if I'm just not finding the right records. What I do know is that the shed being unlocked wasn't random. The motion light wasn't wind. And whoever that man was, he had been watching that cabin for a long time before we ever showed up. We just happened to be the ones who finally found what he left behind. Spring break, $60 a night. I'd have paid anything to unsee that phone on the wall. It was April. 5 of us piled into my buddy Derek's Jeep and drove 12 hours straight from Columbus, Ohio, down to a rental house outside Panama City Beach, Florida. It was one of those places you find on a sketchy listing site, cheap, right off a back road. Owner says cash only, keys under the mat. We didn't care. We were 20 and stupid, and all we wanted was a week away from everything. The drive down was fine. Gas station food, the kind of laughing that happens when you haven't slept and everything feels slightly unreal. We got there around 2 in the morning. The house was further from the beach than the listing said, about a mile back, surrounded by palmetto brush and pine trees, with a gravel driveway that crunched under the tires when we pulled in. It wasn't much to look at. Single-story, pale yellow paint peeling off the siding, 2 small bedrooms, a living room with a couch that smelled like mildew. But we didn't care. It had a working fridge, a fire pit out back, and a porch with plastic chairs. Good enough. We threw our bags down and sat around the fire pit until almost sunrise. Nobody wanted to waste a single hour sleeping. The first 2 days were exactly what you'd expect. Beach, sun, food, repeat. Normal, fun. The kind of normal that makes what came next so hard to process. It was the 3rd night when things started to shift. Derek noticed it first. He came into the kitchen where I was making food and said, quietly, "Hey, have you gone into the back bedroom yet?" I told him no. We were all sleeping in the front 2 rooms. Nobody had a reason to go in there. He gave me a weird look. Said he'd opened the door by accident looking for the bathroom and something felt off. He couldn't explain it, just said it felt wrong. Cold, like the air in that room was different from the rest of the house. I told him he was being dramatic. He laughed it off. We dropped it. That night around midnight I woke up because I heard a door, not opening, just the soft mechanical click of a latch releasing. I lay there for a second, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Told myself it was the wind or the house settling. Old houses do that. Then I heard movement, not footsteps, not creaking, just the subtle shift of weight on a floor, the way a house sounds different when someone is moving through it versus when it's empty. I sat up. My roommate Jake was asleep in the other bed, snoring lightly. I grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and walked into the hallway. Nothing. Living room was empty. Front door was locked. I checked the back door. Locked. Checked every window. All closed. I went back to bed. Told myself I was tired and overthinking it. The next morning I was the first one up. I made coffee and walked through the house slowly, and that's when I saw it. The back bedroom door was open. I specifically remembered Derek saying he'd closed it after he looked inside. None of us had any reason to go in there, but it was open. Wide open. I stood in the hallway looking at it for a long moment. Then I walked in. The room was empty, one bare mattress on a metal frame, a small window with broken blinds, a closet door on the far wall shut. I don't know why I opened it. I think part of me expected to find nothing and feel better. What I found instead made my stomach drop. On the closet floor, shoved into the back corner, was a duffel bag, dark green, beat up, with someone's initials scratched into the zipper pull with what looked like a key. And sitting right next to it, a plastic bag from a convenience store. Inside the bag, a gas station receipt dated 2 days ago, a wrapper from a sandwich, and a small orange prescription bottle with the label torn off. Someone had been in that house recently, and that bag was still there. I went and woke Derek up, didn't say anything, just walked him to the closet and showed him. We stood there looking at it without speaking for about 10 seconds. Then Derek said, "We need to leave." I agreed. But I also said we needed to call the police before we touched anything. We got everyone else up, moved everyone outside to the Jeep, and I called 911, explained the situation. They sent a deputy out within 20 minutes. The deputy walked through the house with his hand on his belt the whole time. When he got to that closet, he went rigid for just a second. I noticed it. He covered it fast, but I saw it. He made a phone call outside, came back in, told us this particular property had been flagged before. Someone had been squatting in various rentals along that stretch of road, entering between guest stays when listings showed gaps in bookings. He said in most cases they were just looking for a place to sleep. Most cases. He wouldn't tell us what the other cases involved. I asked twice. He changed the subject both times. They cleared the house. Nobody was inside when they searched it. Whoever had been there was already gone. We left anyway, packed our bags in 15 minutes, loaded up the Jeep and drove until we found a motel 40 minutes north. We paid for 2 nights and didn't talk much for the rest of the trip. The thing that stayed with me wasn't the bag. It wasn't even the idea that someone had been sleeping in that house while we were there. It was the receipt. 2 days ago. We had been in that house for 2 days before I found it, which meant at some point, while we were at the beach or sleeping or sitting around that fire pit in the backyard, someone had come back, walked through that door, and left again. And we never heard a thing. I don't know who that person was. I don't know what they wanted. The deputy's face when he opened that closet, the way he went still for just a moment, I've thought about that a lot. Whatever those other cases were, whatever happened in them, he didn't want to put that image in my head. But it's too late. It's already there. I went on spring break to have the time of my life. I came back wondering if I was ever going to make it home at all. 5 of us had been planning this trip since November, the classic spring break destination. Cheap motels, packed beaches, the kind of trip you tell stories about for years. We drove down from Ohio in 2 cars, windows cracked, nobody thinking about anything except the next 7 days. We got there on a Friday night. The strip was exactly what you'd expect, crowded, loud, neon signs everywhere, groups of college kids spilling out of every restaurant. We found our motel, a 2-story place maybe 3 blocks from the beach, dropped our stuff and went out. The first 2 days were fine, normal, fun, even. It was the 3rd day that things started going wrong. We'd gone to the beach in the afternoon, and by evening, our group had split up the way groups always do on trips like that. My buddy Caleb and I ended up at a restaurant close to the strip, while the others went somewhere else. Around 11, Caleb ran into some people he knew from back home, and I decided to head back to the motel on my own. It wasn't far, maybe a 10-minute walk. I'd done it twice already. I was about halfway back when I realized a car had slowed down beside me. Dark blue sedan. Old. The kind of car that looked like it had been driven hard for a long time. The window was already down and a man leaned across the passenger seat smiling up at me. He looked maybe mid-40s. Sunburned. Baseball cap. He asked if I knew where a place called Shoreline Grill was. I didn't. I told him that. I kept walking. He kept pace with me and said he was pretty sure it was nearby, asked if I could just check my phone real quick. Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten, too calm, too patient, like he had nowhere to be and all night to get there. I said I didn't have service and walked faster. He thanked me and drove off. I told myself I was being paranoid. College kid, too many crime podcasts, reading danger into nothing. I got back to the motel and forgot about it. The next afternoon, I saw the same car. I was at a convenience store about a block from the motel, grabbing water and snacks, and when I walked out, the blue sedan was parked across the street. I don't know what made me look. I just did. And the man in the baseball cap was sitting behind the wheel, not moving, not on his phone, just sitting there facing the direction of our motel. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he was waiting for someone. But my chest went tight in that way it does when something doesn't sit right and you can't explain why. I went back inside the store and waited. When I looked again a few minutes later, the car was gone. That night I told my friend Cole what I'd seen. He didn't brush it off. Cole had grown up in a city, and he had that instinct, the kind that gets sharpened early when you learn to pay attention. He said we should be careful, stick together, not walk alone at night. We told the others. Most of them thought we were being dramatic. Caleb laughed it off entirely, but Cole and I both kept our eyes open. 2 days passed without anything. I started to relax. We were having a good time again, and I'd almost convinced myself the whole thing was a coincidence, wrong place, wrong timing, nothing more. Then on the 6th night, Cole knocked on my door at almost midnight, breathing hard. He'd gone to the vending machine at the end of the first-floor hallway alone, which he shouldn't have done but didn't think twice about in the moment. On his way back, he passed the ice machine alcove near the stairwell and he saw him. The man from the car, baseball cap, standing in the alcove just inside the shadows watching the hallway. He didn't run. He said he knew instinctively not to run, not to show that he'd seen him. He walked normally back to his room, locked the door and called me. We called the front desk immediately, told them exactly what happened and exactly what he looked like. The guy at the desk said he'd check it out and call the police if needed. We didn't know if he believed us or not. We pushed the dresser against the door between our 2 rooms and stayed up for hours. The police came. 2 officers walked the property and found nothing. The man was gone. They took our description and told us to keep our doors locked and call if anything else happened. Standard language. We thanked them and they left. None of us slept that night. What the police told us the next morning changed everything. A detective called the motel and asked to speak with Cole. It turned out the description he'd given matched a man they'd been looking into in connection with another incident from 2 days earlier. A young woman in a different motel, 2 miles down the strip. She had woken up in the middle of the night to find the sliding glass door to her ground floor room partially open. Her bag had been gone through. She didn't know how he'd gotten in. This man had been moving through the area quietly, patient, calculating. He wasn't grabbing people off the street. He was watching, learning routines, waiting for the right moment when someone was alone enough, distracted enough, for things to go further than they had so far. We left that morning, packed up in under an hour, loaded both cars, and drove straight back to Ohio. 14 hours without stopping much. Nobody complained. Nobody suggested staying. I've thought about that trip more times than I can count since then. About the moment I stood outside that convenience store and watched his car drive away, thinking I was probably just being paranoid. About how close Cole came to being alone in that hallway with him. About how differently things could have gone if he'd hesitated 1 second longer, or if we hadn't trusted that feeling enough to say something out loud. If you are ever somewhere unfamiliar and something feels wrong, a face you've seen twice in places that don't connect, a car that moves too slowly, someone whose patience doesn't make sense, trust that feeling immediately. Don't wait for it to make sense. Don't talk yourself out of it. The people who get hurt are almost never surprised that something was wrong. They just convince themselves it wasn't worth saying out loud. Say it out loud, every time. If you made it to the end of this video, hit that subscribe button right now so you never miss next stories. Drop a like on this video, and I want to hear from you in the comments. Would you have noticed the signs or would you have brushed them off? Let me know. I'll see you in the next one.